Welcome to the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden. I'm glad you could join me, and thank you for being a part of the Upland Nation. Very special podcast today. We're on location, if you will, somewhere in south central Montana. That's about as good as I can give you right now. We'll talk more about the location with the guys who arranged all of that in just a moment. But before we do, let me just kind of preview what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about sharptail hunting. We're going to be talking about Hungarian partridge hunting, access, and strategies as well with one of the founders and one of the principal guys in the organization called LandTrust.com. Yeah, new sponsor with a great, what I'll just call very entrepreneurial way to access ground, so that if you are looking for high quality hunting, among other things, there's an app for it now, if you will. And that'll be the gist of our discussion today. We'll be going into depth on how that all works. We'll be going into depth on hunting strategies and tactics for those birds and maybe some others. I'm looking out the window right now at 6 dogs on one tie out and then 1 dog on the floor in front of us. We'll also talk about them. In this very special bonus on location episode of the Upland Nation podcast is brought to you by Sage and Breaker Gun Care Products, Pointer Shotguns, Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School, TrulockChokes Tubes, MidwayUSA.com, Purina Pro Plan Sport Dog Food at ProPlansport.com, and LandTrust.com, as well as HiViz Shooting Systems. See what you've been missing. All right, so let's start it off. Let's introduce everybody. We're going around the trailer, first of all. So, Nick, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what you do there?
Yeah, sure. Appreciate it, Scott. So my name is Nic Di Castro. I'm the founder and CEO of Land Trust. And, I guess I'm the guy who's trying to stay out of the way of all the important employees getting all the work done.
Well, speaking of important employees, next to you, across the trailer from me, is Trevor. Trevor, tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Scott. My name is Trevor Walz, and I'm the partnerships lead at Land Trust. So my day-to-day is trying to bring good quality partners to the brand, and in turn, we believe that our role is also to create a lot of value for our partners.
And you have done exactly that in so many ways. I think we talked a lot in the last day or so while we were hunting about how this kind of an organization and this kind of an arrangement really bring value to the hunting experience. And it's different than most. And so let's talk about that first. Nick, why don't you kind of give us an overview of how LandTrust.com works?
Sure. So we are a kind of a classic marketplace. On one side of the marketplace, we have landowners. In our marketplace, it's predominantly owner-operator farms and ranches. So like the one we're on here today, Dick and Kathy Holzer's place, they're a multi-generation farm and ranch family. So they list their land on Land Trust, and they're willing to host guests out here to hunt. They don't have fishing on this property, but hunt, RV, do all that fun stuff. So it's all DIY. Mm-hmm. So we're not, we have nothing against outfitters, but we just don't really do much outfitted stuff. It's basically just landowners who have this amazing resource, like the property we've been on today, who are saying, hey, I'd like to generate some extra income and host people out on the place and, have a win-win for folks. So, yeah.
Trevor, you've described this in the past in a way that I think is pretty helpful to most people. There's a spectrum of public access and high-end private lodges, we'll call it that. Mm-hmm. In the middle, there's some other things. There's all the walk-in and block management here in Montana. Every state has something like that. But then there's also this vast, untapped resource of well-managed private ground. So how do you make the match?
Well, I think you said a lot of it there, Scott. There's a lot of options, and we believe we're another option. Like Nick said, we're not against any of the options. We think we're bringing a a really nice opportunity and accessibility to a lot of people. And a big part of that is also connecting these ranch families, these multi-generational ranch families, with the people that want to come to their places. I mean, we saw it kind of firsthand last night. Dick and Kathy came by to say hi and welcome us, and we're excited to be here, but they're also really excited to have us.
One of the things that I love about hunting is you get to meet people like Dick and Kathy. And I don't care where you are. It doesn't matter even what you're hunting, probably, as much as they are of like mind in so many ways. And my research tells me that most of us go hunting for a few things. But right at the top of the list are watching the dogs work, and being with friends and family. And while they're not family, they are becoming friends very quickly. And that's kind of what struck me most last night about getting to know them a little bit.
Yeah, I think Dick even said it himself. I mean, he's excited about having people out and getting to know them, hearing about their lives. And I think we have to remember that, for most of these landowners, they don't leave a whole lot. And, they know their properties, they know what they do. We're incredibly thankful that they do what they do every day, but at the same time, we're also bringing them a lot of joy and kind of creating some new experiences that they probably wouldn't have.
Yeah, we see this a lot in reviews left by landowners. So again, for folks, you could think about us a lot like an Airbnb, but instead of lodging, it's about access to land for outdoor rec. And so there's reviews after this trip. I think you booked this trip, Scott, so you'll get an email saying, hey, review your experience, and they will too for hosting you. But in those reviews, we see our landowners talk a lot about, one, how respectful the guests and the sportsmen they have out are, but two, on both sides, you see so much raving about just the interactions and getting to know about these. On the guest side, getting to know about the families and how long these places have been here and the practices that they have. But, for the landowners, it's really nice for them to have these great social interactions. Again, these are busy people who spend a lot of time in very rural areas, and having people out who, when we see their property, we see it with these like big eyes, right? It's, wow, look at all this incredible ground. A lot of times they live and work here their whole life, so it's every day to them. So we hear hear a lot. I mean, Trevor and I were out in eastern Montana on one of our ranches out there last week, and we were sitting with 3 generations of the family, and it's Chester, who's kind of the patriarch of that family, just said how nice it was to sit and visit with folks who appreciate all the work they put in. And that is a big deal. Yes, they're making some income from it too, but it's more than that.
Yeah, it really is, and it's simple too. These people have agreed to do this because they want that kind of an experience for themselves as well as what they can offer us. Trevor, walk us through the process. This is a pretty simple process, but there are several steps, and I'm remembering. Well, the first thing you got to do is open an account. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean a whole lot. It means you go to the website, you give a little bit of information, and then carry on from there.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely starts with creating an account, and by the way, that's free. We encourage anybody who's at all interested to create an account on our website. We ask you a few pretty simple questions. Where do you live? Where do you like to hunt? What do you like to hunt? We use that information to queue up ultimately what we call kind of scouting for you. So we're going to send you properties that match up to what you've told us. Not a whole bunch of stuff that you said you're not interested in or you didn't tell us you were. So it's very calculated, very strategic. So you create an account, you start getting some listings or some ideas from us. From there, you find something that you like, and you're going to inquire or ask some questions to the landowners that's hosting that package or that trip. You've got some plenty of opportunities there to go back and forth to kind of plan with that landowner. And then ultimately, you send a booking inquiry to the landowner. Every landowner has the opportunity to say yes or no. We do that strategically because our landowners are always in control throughout this process. But most of the time they're going to say yes. They're excited to have you. They accept the trip, and then from there you're going to get started in an email that kind of starts again next steps to planning your trip, Onyx, HuntWise coordinates, and some other nice to have information.
Yeah, those property maps are a big deal, and then arrival instructions from the landowners.
Right.
The classic stuff. Hey, you see the barn on the right?
Yeah,
Go park over here, and here's all the waypoints and all that stuff.
And so it really does help to have Onyx or HuntWise,
yes.
because eventually, Nick, I know it's not coming from you, but your company through you is sending me a pin.
That's
basically.
Right. Yeah, map property boundaries
Yeah.
and pins and all that stuff. Yep.
So we know where we can go, where
That's
we
right.
can't go, that sort of thing. Now, it's not just any schlub who can walk on and start doing this. He's got to be kind of vetted a little bit, and the landowners are vetted too. You don't just sign people up. Somebody looks at this property,
That's right.
don't they?
Yeah. So, on both sides, marketplaces are really good at transparency and trust and safety.
Yeah.
So, on the landowner side, landowners can't just push listings live on our website. They all have to be approved by us. So that means either someone from our team is going out to these properties, or they're talking to us over the phone. They have to own the property or have have the actual recreation rights to that property.
Yeah.
And so we handhold. So if there's landowners out there who are interested, we know that farmers and ranchers, landowners are busy people. We will help them do that whole process. But we have a lot of touches with those landowners before a property goes live on Land Trust. Mm-hmm. And then on the guest side, we do ID verification.
Yeah.
So government ID, we use a partner that does this for all the big banks and everybody else. So we make sure you are who you say you are. As you know, you book with a credit card. So it's interesting. When I first started this company, a lot of people said, "Oh, it'll never work because there's been bad interactions between landowners and hunters, especially because we're using guns and all that." But really, when I looked at those bad interactions, those negative ones that landowners had, it was, I think, because those guests were anonymous. It's just like, some guy in a truck drove up and knocked on my door. They seemed nice enough, and then they broke a gate or they left a gate open or they did something else, and then they drove away. And there was no accountability or transparency. So with Land Trust, hey, we know who you are. You paid with your credit card. We have insurance policies. We do all that stuff. So we have had zero of those types of negative experiences. I think there's 96% of our landowners have rated their guests 5 stars.
Wow.
And, there's just a lot more trust built in there. And again, landowners always get to say no if they want.
The fascinating part about all this to me is that several generations of hunters and then anglers and anybody else who wants permission to recreate on private ground have never learned the art of door knocking. You guys, landtrust.com is you should change the name to we'll do the knocking for you.com. It's a skill, and we've been talking in the last few weeks about how many, particularly younger people, don't know how to conduct a business telephone call.
Yeah.
If you can't make a business telephone call, how are you going to drive down a long driveway and knock on a stranger's door and then ask permission to walk around with a dog and a gun?
Yeah, yeah, deadly weapon.
So you are the matchmaker.
We are.
Between the two parties.
And don't get me wrong. I mean, I grew up bird hunting. I'm sure we'll get into kind of our backgrounds, but certainly we door knocked a bunch, and you have some success sometimes. And look, before starting this company, I was in sales. I'm not a shy person, and I still didn't love door knocking. Yeah, I mean, I don't know anyone that loves it on either side. You do it because you kind of need to, but. I personally believe it's gotten a lot harder because, as we may talk about, the amount of huntable ground has gotten less, and that means more people are going to knock on those doors. I think Onyx or somebody did a film recently where they interviewed a rancher that was on the north end of the Bridger Mountains right outside Bozeman, and he said he went from, handful of people knocking on his door, and he said, go get them, 20, 30 years ago to 80 people a weekend.
Wow.
So just... that's not sustainable. I mean, that guy's got a job. He lives there. And so I think it's just gotten a lot harder to do those things.
Very much so. In the time savings, we talked a little bit about that this morning. Oh, by the way, we will talk about our hunting too.
Oh, yes.
But to put a capper on this aspect of it, there is a slice of the hunting community, or the angling community for that matter, the hiking and the birding community for that matter,
or camping. We're in a trailer right now. Yeah.
They're not going to they're never going to pay for access.
Of course, yeah.
And that's all well and good.
Yep.
A lot of people will, and then the question becomes how much.
Yep.
And that, of course, is to a degree market-based. But, Trevor, you look at this stuff every day. What's it costing me to come here? About $100 a day?
Yep.
For a whole day on a private ranch.
Exclusive access.
What are we on, like six? How many thousands of acres are we on right now?
Yeah, I mean,
I think it is
not all
6.
contiguous, but we put them all together. Yeah, about 6,000.
Yeah.
So you weigh that against driving around, knocking on doors.
Gas is $4.40.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, the price is almost immaterial.
Mm-hmm.
If you're driving, the average hunter on this average big trip of the year spends $1,200.
Wow.
Okay. So what's another 100 here, 100 there? If you know you're going to have private access to a massive amount of better managed land. And I think that's the real key to this. It's not some government agency that may or may not be doing a good job.
May or may not like hunters.
Let's not go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But it is an alternative to all of that,
Yes.
and it is certainly a more affordable alternative than some of the private
Yes.
lodges, for example, or outfitters, for example. And like you said, Nick, it's a DIY thing.
That's right.
So all we're doing is we're getting the keys to the kingdom.
And by the way, part of that, the average trip, which we see is actually pretty interesting, is right around the same for the vacation, right? This isn't just popping out for the day.
Right.
But, I mean, we're staying here too. We brought our own lodging. So you pulled a trailer, we pulled a trailer. But we are getting access to this beautiful ground, and this is our, quote, lodging all rolled into that price.
And we can walk out the front door and be hunting.
We can. Mm-hmm. That's right.
Or listening to the coyotes at night.
Not a 45-minute drive from the motel in town and all that.
Let's talk a little bit about our hunting trip, but we'll start by our hunting backgrounds. Trevor, when you pulled in with a dog trailer and you put out a stakeout that has 6, there's at least 6 dogs out there. You obviously love this world.
Absolutely.
Tell me more.
Yeah, I mean, my quick background is I grew up around hunting. My dad was an avid upland and waterfowl hunter. We fished a ton. I grew up on the Mississippi, and I always knew I would get to that part of life in a bigger way at some point. But as a young kid, like many, got kind of down the path of athletics, and that took me through college. And then I ended up racing bikes for a while, and ultimately kind of hit this place of I'm ready. That I knew it was coming, and now's the time. And so, yeah, through some really good friends and mentors, got connected with some good breeders, and ultimately I bought a short hair out of Colorado, and 6 months later I bought another short hair, actually his litter mate, and the years go by, and it seems like I add another dog to the string, but I have a very tolerant wife who loves the dogs. But no, I mean, all kidding aside, I mean, it's an absolute passion, and I'm super thankful to have the opportunity to want to own a bunch of awesome dogs and get to spend a lot of days following them around.
So, what about the bird hunting experiences do you like the most?
Those guys out on the string there.
Yep. How about you, Nick? Same thing? Is it about Jake?
Well, I don't have 6 dogs, so they'd be divorced. I have one black lab in here. He's a pointing lab, which he reconfirmed today.
Well, we're still taking your word on that. Don't forget.
Tripod point, which is weird, but No, I mean, I grew up upland bird hunting, as we talked about. I grew up in Southern California. Everyone gasps listening.
There was a time when you could do that.
There was a time where Southern California was absolute heaven.
Yeah.
So I grew up hunting. We always Brittany's. My dad's always had Brittany's, and we'd usually get them out of Texas. I'm not sure why, but we did. And we hunted the low deserts of Southern California, chasing valley quail and chukar. I think the first memory I have is probably on a dove hunt. I was 3 years old, 115-degree heat outside of Salton City, and going and fetching birds for my dad because we never used our bird dogs for doves.
No.
Always Brittany's, and hunting up and down California. We'd get up in the Central Valley and do some pheasants. We'd get up to Klamath and do some ducks and pheasants and stuff like that. But have always been that. I got into big game hunting more recently in 2015, 2016 when I was in Colorado.
Yeah.
But that's my hunting lineage is pretty much purely birds until the last few years.
Well, but to be clear, landtrust.com will offer a number of, in fact, was it last night or this morning, you said, hey, this place that we're on just
got a mule deer booking.
Yes,
they got a booking for mule deer hunting. And we've seen a bunch of mule deer. We haven't seen the bucks yet. We've seen a bunch of does around. But, so, it is absolutely for all sorts of outdoor rec. I mean, we have people who are booking fishing trips. We have people who are booking foraging.
Yeah.
And as we get into other parts of the country, I'm sure we'll see snowmobiling, all sorts of just whatever you might knock on a landowner's door and ask them, hey, can I go do that thing outside on your place? We can usually help with that. Yeah. We started with hunting. Hunting is a tent pole for us. And I'm really excited about upland hunting because, one, it's the core of who I am and where I came from. But I also think it's just such an outstanding resource for upland hunters who could – I mean, we have properties – you could have booked 3 properties around here and bounced around between them. Yeah. I'm excited about that.
Well, and the other challenge to an upland hunt is, to a large degree, a privately owned and managed ranch or farm is going to, just by the nature of that business, have more amenable habitat for game birds.
Yep.
You can find an elk on a national forest. You can find a deer on a national on BLM ground. But the better bird hunting is going to be on a place that has some crops, maybe has some managed water, maybe has a variety of crops and some other, the cover and whatever. You're listening to the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden. I have Nic Di Castro and Trevor Walz from landtrust.com. I promised you we're going to talk hunting as well, and we'll talk some dog stuff too. So stick around right after this.
And this very special bonus on location episode of the Upland Nation podcast is brought to you by Sage and Breaker Gun Care Products, Pointer Shotguns, Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School, TrulockChokes Tubes, MidwayUSA.com, Purina ProPlan Sport Dog Food at ProPlansport.com, and LandTrust.com, as well as HiViz Shooting Systems. See what you've been missing.
Nick, Trevor, this has been fun for all sorts of reasons, but mainly because we've been out chasing dogs. It got a little warm in the afternoon, but in the morning we had a lot of fun out there. I think the interesting thing about what we did this morning is what we didn't do. We didn't find a lot of sharptails. Our goal was sharptails, and it's a great sharptail year. They just weren't where we were at the time, but we did something that I think is a lesson to everybody. And Trevor, why don't you describe, how we kind of made it work for us?
Yeah, I mean, we started the day going out and checking out an area of the ranch that, looked great. And we got on the ground with some dogs, and, what do you know, it was great out there. Birds just hadn't moved into that area yet, or kind of that coverage yet. So spent some time exploring, and then
we also did see 6 coyotes out there.
Yes.
So let's call that out.
And by the way, if you want to do a coyote hunt, you could go to landtrust.com.
They maybe added one of those packages. But no, all good stuff out there, but decided to load up the dogs and switch to a different area, and ultimately take some advice from the rancher, which, that
they do live here every day.
Yeah, Nick and I have learned very quickly that if they bring it up, you want to pay attention to where they're seeing species or seeing animals. So either way, got reparked and got some dogs down. Had one of the short hairs and one of my young pointers out, and they did a couple of big laps for us, and all of a sudden we had a tail go straight in the air, and he was probably 250 yards out. I was admittedly a little worried that he may break on us. I mean, he's only a year and a half, but he stood for us the whole time. We were able to walk in, and more Huns got up than I've seen come out of a covey in a long time.
Well, I'm embarrassed. Number one, I took a shot and I actually killed that bird. Just for the record, and I have two witnesses right here.
It happened.
And then we got another couple dribs and drabs out of that. And then while we were all clapping each other on the back, didn't we have at least three more little groups come out from right around us?
It was like popcorn kernels going off around us.
Yeah, it was. And
they were holding tight. It was
exactly.
Awesome. It was. I haven't ever got to get on Huns. Usually the times I've gotten on Huns, they were in like short, wheat stubble, and they can kind of see you coming, and they flush wild. These birds were holding. I mean, there was one after that first shot. You killed that bird. You guys were standing there for 2 minutes, sitting with the dogs, and birds just started coming out right next to you.
Yeah, and of course we had our guns open and probably unloaded.
As you do.
And we were just thinking we were hot stuff, and never bothered with any of the others. The interesting part about that, I want to talk about habitat and why we made this switch, and then I also want to talk about.
You want to talk about that pointing lab?
Pointing lab.
Yeah,
we'll get to that because I want to blow by blow on that. We went to a spot that had all the indications that it would be classic sharptail habitat. The cover was sparse but not too sparse, tall but not too tall, rolling hills, if you will, with some coulees and some denser, different types of cover.
Rose hips.
We found roses. We found snowberries or buffalo berries.
Buffalo berries, yep.
And it had all the indications that this,
and water.
Yeah, and
Perfection.
water at the bottom. So we found all this stuff, and we walked it pretty hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, we made a couple big circles with different dogs. Not even a excited dog.
No.
So they weren't there, like you said, Trevor. Then we went somewhere else, and all of a sudden they were there. But they weren't there. It was Huns, but it was we had a directive from the landowner, and then we looked at that cover, and it was more honey than the sharptail cover, more level. What about the cover itself? It was different too, wasn't it, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think we all thought it was a little bit thicker, taller cover than we thought we would find Huns in.
Yeah.
And then sure enough, we saw a lot of Huns there.
Yeah.
And they were holding tight in it. We're sitting looking at, some wheat fields that you'd think.
Another couple 100 acres.
Yeah, you're like, oh, they'd be out there. But it goes to show, I think, different regions are going to have birds doing some different stuff. Mm-hmm. And then we found, right next to the truck, as it usually happens, they were hanging out in just, some alfalfa.
Yeah, hiding behind round bales.
Yep.
And
out of the wind, because the wind started going a little bit more. And
by the way, where I live in Oregon, round bales are probably going to be outlawed next year.
Why?
The PETA folks don't like them because the cows can't get a square meal.
Oh. All right, there you go.
Okay,
add in the sound effects.
Tad Newberry, if you're listening, that's for you, my friend.
Add in the sound effects.
I'm going to have to get some pots and pans out so I can get the butter. Boom.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you want to hear about the pointing lab or not?
Yeah, no, it's time for that. Give us the blow-by-blow on the alleged point by the alleged pointing lab.
All right, this is a shout-out to Iowa Pointing Labs, where I got Jake out of Iowa. In all seriousness, great dogs. He's sitting next to you in a 10 degrees below blind, and he'll jump in the water for you. He's a retriever through and through. He is a pointing lab. But I haven't had him out on upland. And like I said, Trevor and I went out hunting last week, and we saw, 200 sharpies. I was like, dang it, I should have brought him out. It was a little hot. I don't know. But I decided to bring him this time. And, of course, I'm not expecting him to, you got the pointers and all that stuff. Let them do that. But I wanted to get him in the mix. And we got into a bunch of birds. They started breaking out. which was great to see him getting singled up and all that. And I shot a bird, saw the leg drop, and so we went after it. You guys were kind of still chasing some other singles out, and sure enough, there he goes. He threw a tripod at the bird. Now, he was close. He's a little close to the bird.
He's a Labrador.
But I'm looking at him. I said, "Oh my!" And it was in deep stuff. I would have never. That injured bird would have never popped out. I would have never found that bird.
Yeah.
And it didn't get up again. I told him it's a dead bird, and he went in and grabbed it. But I was a proud dad there.
Oh yeah, he did a great job, and he would have come in handy if we had dropped more birds in cover like that.
Totally.
It would have been critical.
Very
to
thick.
Have that dog. As it was fun, and he did. He worked close. We had big runners.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. A lot of field trial stock, and then one wire hair who stayed relatively close too. But it was a good match in that regard. I want to talk for a minute. We got him on the tailgate after that hunt, and we all kind of looked at him. We were doing some things. Trevor, you have a trick for getting crap out of dogs' eyes that I've never seen before. We ultimately used my trick as well down the road on another seed.
Yeah, Jake had some seeds in his eyes. Yeah,
I pulled a few or washed a few out today too. It's definitely something to be aware of.
But you did something. You told Nick, do this, then this, and then something else.
Yeah, I guess it's a trick, but it goes back to a vet that I've been working with in the Bozeman area. And so his advice, it's 3 steps. It's cover, so you're pulling the eyelid over the dog's eye, the upper eyelid over. You're pushing, not just gently pushing on that eyelid onto their eye, and then pulling down their lower eyelid. And typically what that's going to do is, one, it's sealing off any seed from being able to go up, because you're pulling that upper lash down. You're pushing to apply pressure to pop a seed out from under, and then you're lowering that bottom eyelid to be able to expose it.
Yeah, you can get a finger in there. And hey everybody, if you're not training your dog to sit for this kind of stuff, you ought to be doing that.
Yeah. He was actually he was very amenable. He didn't give us too much problem.
It helps a lot if they've been running hard.
Yeah.
But it's like everything else. A tired dog is a trainable dog. A tired dog is a doctorable dog.
Yeah, you're right, Scott. I mean, it's really important to handle your dogs, handle their paws, open their eyelids, open their ears, because the last thing you want is a dog that's uncomfortable with that situation when you really need to get in there and get something out.
Yeah, and it'll cause more serious damage if you don't get it out. And then we used my trick, which is, and by the way, the veterinary ophthalmologists tell me distilled water rather than contact solution or saline solution or something like that. Put that in a little squeeze bottle that has a little squirty thing on it.
Yeah, that worked really nice too.
And then you could just open the eye, lean them a little bit downhill, if you will.
Yeah.
Squirt a gentle stream of that in there, and it'll wash out a lot of that stuff. And it was almost a textbook example of that.
Yeah.
So those kind of things work. We did a few things from a strategic standpoint on our hunts today. Besides picking what we thought was good cover for both species. We did some things with the wind. There's a pretty significant wind. It was a little more gentle this morning. And then because of that, we used the landscape a little bit. And I'm trying to think back on even those last Huns we were shooting at, or the ones that we didn't get a shot at.
Yeah.
They were all hiding behind a windbreak.
Yep.
Now, it might not have been much. It might have been a drop off of 2 feet. And they were on the leeward side of that, but sometimes they were in a little bowl, or they were in a little bit higher cover than they should have been in.
Yeah.
So those are things, and I've had that experience as well. Last winter, we were crossing a wheat field just to get back to the truck before we caught frostbite. And the wheat field was pretty much all the same, but there was a little low spot in the middle, and I'm not paying any attention. Then I realized that my dog Flick is on point there, in the middle of this field.
And you're thinking, no way.
It looks empty to me. But 4-inch stubble and a little low spot was enough of a windbreak for Hungarian partridge.
Oh, yeah.
And it really taught me something about how little they need sometimes But
And how much to trust your dog, right?
well, eventually I'll learn that too. I'm only on my 5th one. See, you're already ahead of me, and you got them all at the same time. But it's absolutely true. What else did we learn today? Nick, you got any lessons that you're going to take to the bank?
Trust the people on the ground.
Yeah.
With land trusts, it's really nice because, you're going out. They are not hunting guides. So we actually ran into a guide at the bar
lunch, yeah.
at lunch, and that was a great conversation. So it's really nice with land trusts. You're talking to people who live almost exclusively. They live and work on the property, and they're out here. They see stuff all the time. Now, they don't look at it like bird hunters do. Usually they say, "Oh yeah, we see some birds over here," and then you go over there, and sure enough, there they are. So I would say, take on the ground advice, and if they say they see stuff somewhere, go check it out.
Yeah, that's a real good point. And again, the landholders you're working with, for the most part, they really, you know what they are? They're in the hospitality business. We've talked briefly about that, and I think it's absolutely true. They want to help you, and if that means, well, go there instead of there.
Yeah,
they're
we see them in the mornings over here. In the evenings, we might see them over there.
Yeah. What's your takeaway, Trevor, on all of this? What our hunt today and hunting in general, for that matter? What's a lesson for you?
Yeah, I mean, every hunt's going to be different.
Yeah.
And the dogs are going to have good days and bad days, just like we are. And I would say, just read your area. Take what the weather's giving you, and be willing to pack up the truck and move a location. Get boots on the ground. And yeah, at the end of the day, trust your dogs.
Yeah.
Well, persistence, I think. If I go
oh yeah,
you could walk around, but especially with this big country,
yeah,
you got to just go walk.
Mm-hmm.
You got to go walk, and you got to try new places, and you got to be persistent.
I just wrote a story for somebody, and the advice I gave in one particular portion of it was about chukars, and I said, if you're not finding any cheatgrass, that's not the only thing they eat. But if you're not seeing a lot of cheatgrass, try and find a new spot.
Yep.
That's a one good indicator.
Move around.
Yep.
Yeah. This morning, somewhere on an uphill pull, when I wasn't falling, I noticed that we hadn't seen any grasshoppers yet. Now, it was a little earlier in the morning, a little cooler. They weren't going to be as active. But I've heard the opposite. Our good friend and guest of the show, Al Gadori, tells me time and time again, if they have a choice, sharptails are going to eat grasshoppers.
Yeah.
And if you don't see any, or you don't see any evidence of them, if you find alfalfa, for example, and none of it's chewed up,
Yeah.
maybe not a good idea to waste much of your time.
Yeah.
What about in general? Trevor, you got 6 dogs. You keep care of these dogs. They're all in great shape. They're beautiful animals. They're well trained. If you were to tell anybody anything about dog training or dog care, what's high on your priority list that maybe we haven't thought about?
I mean, something that I'm always working on is patience.
Yeah.
And I think and I've learned that I've had this said to me numerous times by people that have been doing it a lot longer, and it's, every dog is going to move at a different pace, and you can't rush that. And as you see that happen more and more with more dogs, it actually kind of lights the fire a little bit more, turns up the flame, and because we're all waiting for the light bulb to go on, especially with young dogs, and when it does, it's a whole new world opens up. But I think that's probably one of the bigger ones for me, is just be patient and let the process be the process.
And it's interesting. I wrote a story for Outdoor Life a long time ago, and then the editor calls and he says, I need it by next week. Then he says, and what I want you to do a kind of a month by month progression of training a puppy in his first year. And I said, what he said.
Yeah. Yeah. They're all different.
and so I said, I'll give you 18 months. And at the end of 18 months, there will be a big -ISH.
Yeah.
And it came out pretty good. But in that 18 or so months is the light bulb being switched off again once in a while. Plateaus, peaks. You were a biker. You were a competitor. You're in sales. You relate to this every day. Anybody who does anything that's performance-based, realize you're not on every day, and you do have setbacks.
And you get through those ups and downs by just consistency. You know, the more your dogs have, or the more you can expose them to, and the more consistent you can be as a trainer, the better it's going to be in the long run.
Nick, how about yourself? You get to hunt. Everybody thinks all you do is hunt, and the business runs itself.
That is not true.
But when you're out there and you're thinking, "Wow, am I glad that happened?" and I'm glad that I learned how to make that happen, or something.
Well, at this stage of my life, which you have all seasons, right? I have 3 little kids, wife and company, and last year I hunted 3 days.
Oh my God!
All season. So it just life is busy, and so we joke about Jake. Jake comes from great stock. His dad's a master hunter, and I do feel a little guilty by not having because it is time. I mean, it's just you get out there and do that 30 days this year, and that dog is a lot different than he is today on day 1. And I think it's also just for me, just being able to be out here and to be able to enjoy this. I'm not at a stage where it's like, oh, I got to shoot limits or I'm unhappy because I don't get to hunt enough to have that expectation, So just being out here, and like I said, we talked about it. Him throwing that little point, it's an injured bird, but he pointed that bird. Like, that was good for me. It's like if you go golf, I don't golf a lot. I hit one good shot. You're like, all right, that was a good day.
I can't agree more. I think it really can. You can define your day with one moment.
Yes.
So what was it for you, Trevor? That one moment?
Oh, it was for sure.
Yeah.
Year and a half old dog that, confidence is building every time we're out, but to see him running, basically with the wind, make a nice crossing move, come back around and stop as like a statue.
Head high.
Head high, tail high, and wait for us to take our time to get over
you didn't really
there.
believe him at first, if we're going to be honest. You're like, he's a young dog where he just got out of the truck. You're
totally.
Like, all right.
But, he did the same thing or very similar last week, same deal. Usually you put a young dog down on the ground and they're hot. They're ready to go. They'll blow up some birds. But no, same kind of deal, similar move, snapped back around. Other dog came in and honored him, covey a sharptail. So
nice.
It's back to my point earlier. Trust your dogs, and they'll reward you for it.
I'm insulted. Neither of you mentioned the fact that I got the first shot and I actually killed something with it.
You did indeed.
It was a great shot.
You had a couple good shots.
So that'll be second on your list.
We didn't get Flick on.
No,
he didn't get out there.
He
was
us
on the
a good
first
hard point.
That's right.
On Old Santor or something, and that's good enough.
Yes, but we'll get him out there tomorrow.
Yeah, he'll do fine, and he was just grateful to be out of the truck. It took
couple
two and a half
driving.
days to get here.
So
he's happy, and now he's just relaxed and ready to go again. So we will
maybe this evening.
So
looking out the window, I got some dogs getting restless. They look like they're getting ready to go again too.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. And by the way, that is a really nice string, especially the last two. Trevor's got 4 pointers and 2 short hairs, and that's the order they're in. But it was fun, and let's leave it with this. It was hot today, especially for dogs.
Yeah, it was.
We were lucky. We had 8 dogs to choose from.
Yeah.
We used them all, and we only hunted probably 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah, for that.
So, so there's a lesson in that for everybody. If you're hunting early season in particular, be real mindful of your dogs. I mean, you could do some serious damage.
Yeah, the next few days, luckily, the temperature's going to drop a bit, which will be nice.
Oh, absolutely. Hey, that's the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden. I have with me from landtrust.com. Look them up. You can shop around on that site without opening an account.
That's right.
So if you're looking to maybe explore what they have in central Montana or anywhere else, that's an easy way to do. You can see the listings and see how that works. Anyway, the guys are Trevor Walz and Nic Di Castro from landtrust.com. Again, I'm Scott Linden. This is the Upland Nation podcast. We are brought to you in part by landtrust.com, first to mention. Mid Valley Clays and Shooting School, MidwayUSA.com, Sage and Breaker Gun Care Products. We are also brought to you by, Pointer Shotguns, TrulockChokes. Oh yeah, and my authority website, findbirdhuntingspots.com. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a review or a rating. Thank you to all of our sponsors. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Trevor. Hey, I hope to hear from you and get a story from you all in the field as well. Have a great day.